Instead, we have the opportunity to make a habit of empathy, to recognize ourselves in each other.
Well, my chosen path has been to work with education and who is with the children. If the children are met with empathy, it's a natural instinct, I think, in children. So really for parents and teachers to model that is the key to it, the kind of education I would like to see. Rather than teaching children anything in particular, including empathy, if it is modeled for them, they respond to it naturally. So that's one way, for sure, through changing our parenting practices, educating parents. I think parents need a lot of support, a lot more than they get, including in parenting practices that really work to nourish both themselves and their children. And I'd love to see in our government, in the U.S. government, the kind of support that parents get with parenting leave in many European countries, really honoring family and parents, and then in education. So teachers get this kind of understanding too of how to connect with kids. So that's the realm that I'm working in, and I'm hopeful because I see people working in a lot of realms for this. I would love to see moderators on TV, people bringing, people with empathy skills, bringing together people with differing views on topics and really helping them hear each other. That gives me a thrill to imagine what contribution that would be to a democracy, that people would view on their TV screen real dialogue with understanding rather than inciting fights between people who have differing views, which is what we have now in our political debate. So I think that's so critical to what we hold dear as a democracy. And that seems like a doable thing. I really like to look for practical, doable things, and it's one of the things I would love to see people with empathy skills move into, the media in that way. I would also love to see movies, like I imagine cartoon movies developed that model empathic connection between people. Because it's so rare in our culture, I wonder where children or people of any age would have a notion of how things could be if there was that kind of connection between people. But if they could see it on a screen, even if they didn't have names for it, it would be a glimmer or some kind of a touchstone to, wow, we don't have to be fighting against each other and misunderstanding and in these, really unpleasant interactions. There's another ways possible. So I'd like to feed that hope with, and I think besides the hope, it would be educational too. People would start to go, oh, there are some moves I could make to refrain from that judgment, to step back a minute and consider that person has a point of view. There's so many small moves that could contribute to a more empathic culture. I have more ideas. I'm thinking on it all the time, but those are a few of them.
Ideas. That's one of my main questions, is how can we do this? How can we build this culture of empathy?
Mm-hmm. Well, I really appreciate what you're doing too, because I take heart that there are many of us in many places in our own fields of interest and endeavor bringing empathy forward. And I was really excited when Obama started to talk about empathy, and from what I saw, he got such flack for that I'm guessing he'll never use the word again, which I feel sad about. But at least he did bring it forward into the public sphere, which I think made an impact. It certainly got the word and the idea out there. So more politicians talking about empathy. Of course, we'd like a lot more from the politicians, schools, the political discourse, bringing that in to really further our the information, so we can really take in the information of people who have different points of view about healthcare or whatever. You know, if we could really hear those points rather than just get the heat of the arguments and the it would just nourish our country in so many ways.
Yeah, now the town hall meetings are more like big time wrestling versus that listening that you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so at that level, at the local level, that can start to happen where I like that idea of maybe more town meetings with skillful moderators, people who really are wanting to get the different views out and have people heard rather than get that fighting energy going. That is more what we're accustomed to in our entertainment and media.
Well, it seems like that's what you're kind of about, is building a culture of empathy, and you're kind of starting with education and wanting it to go out to the whole society.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, our education systems, our schools are where we school people in our culture, right? And our teacher trainings, and our children, and we're at the moment teaching them to be adversarial and competitive and working for extrinsic rewards instead of which I see taking people farther and farther away from their what's inside of them, which is more naturally empathic. That would come out, but we're really systematically shutting that down and supporting a culture of violence and greed and deception. We could do this very differently, for sure. And we are. I see that we are creating a new culture.
Bit by bit, step by step. And
yeah, well, I was encouraged by a Paul Hawkins book. Are you familiar with Paul Hawkins' book about how when he'd go to speak, he's on the speaker circuit, and every place he'd go, people would hand him their business card about their organization. It would be like a watershed restoration project or a small school project or community projects along the way, and he didn't know what to do with the business cards, and he sort of put them in a grocery bag and in his closet, and pretty soon there were 3 and 4 bags full of these business cards, and he realized there was a social movement, the biggest social movement in the world, afoot in small ways. People were working locally, they were working on creating their own schools, which is what we get here at Teach for Life, people who are forging, this pathway through creating a new school in their community, or maybe it's a set of schools, maybe it's bigger than that. But I think part of what I enjoy about bringing us together is that often when we're working in our own areas, we feel isolated and like there isn't enough happening, and it's easy to get discouraged and lose hope. And one of the things I enjoy bringing us together, and also when I go out and give talks and conferences and trainings, is to tell people that there are a lot of other people. I call us pioneers. And my background is Mormon pioneers, and I have that metaphor going. And here we are again. We're seeding new ground with empathy and compassion and aliveness. And I see there are many of us doing that. So all together, it feels big. And people are heartened to know that there are other people doing similar work all over the globe.
So you feel the whole movement
Yeah.
for empathy, for a culture of empathy.
Culture of empathy, culture of understanding, culture of compassion and peace. And I see the numbers growing. So that...
You're heartened by that. So.
Yeah, I think it's pretty important to keep heart about it. Yeah, and getting together with other people is helpful. It's like gathering around the campfire at the end of the day, yes, this is a hard road, and yes, we're still on this journey because what else do we do? This is the most fun thing we can think of is to work in this direction and create what's what can hold and nourish empathy and compassion in the world.
see the world through other people's eyes. Now, empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.